Hi, I'm Dr. Bertice Berry, and I want to tell you a story. When my children were young, we had to do a lot of reflective listening. They're all on the spectrum from ADHD to autism and you name it in between. We live on Spectrum Lane. So I learned early on not to give more than one instruction at a time, like go upstairs and do this and do such so and so. It's just do so and so. And I used to say to them, "What did I say?" But I realized very early on, what did I say was not the right question for them. The question was, what did you hear me say? One day I asked my daughter, what did I say? And she said, you said, don't be doing this. And she heard all those negatives. One day I asked her, what did you hear me say? And she said, you said, you be going to the store. And I said, little girl, you didn't have to say it exactly the way I said. But what they began to ask about was that verb to be. The verb to be for black folk in the United States, I don't know about anywhere else. No, everywhere else, is a tricky verb. It's not a verb of past tense or present tense. It's a verb of continuous time. I be, you be so and so and so. That means you're always like that. You be telling people blah 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 blah. You're always telling people blah 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 blah. And it's a tricky verb, but it's not one I'm willing to let go of or act as if it's incorrect, because it is absolutely correct, and it goes beyond and beyond the meaning that most people have. I know I'm getting a little bit deep, but I'm going somewhere. One of the reasons that I continue telling stories was there was a yearning for an understanding of black culture, because believe it or not, we've lived in silos, and folks really silos and separation, and we don't really know one another. And so I realized that a part of that is not getting close enough, and it's hard to get close if you don't know how, and if you don't know how do you get close? And so I continue to tell stories, and including stories of race. One of the things that I found very difficult about doing this is telling these stories, because I read somewhere somebody saying people don't tell our stories. And I was like, well, then why don't you tell them? And then it was like, well, then why don't I tell my own? And so telling my own stories is very difficult, because worse than that's not true is that happens to white people too. That happens to white people. But when we say it be happening to us, we mean it happens to us all the time. It can happen to white people from time to time, but a phenomenon that happens to marginalized people, when people tell you about it, they're telling you something. A young woman told a story at a TED Talk recently, Savannah TED Talk, about being in a wheelchair and being a part of the volunteer crew for TEDx here in Savannah, and how the party was held at a restaurant where their seating was downstairs. And this restaurant had no elevator, and she couldn't get there. And she was talking about the feeling of being a part of this group, being a part of the planning, being a part of the thing, and somehow this big thing was missed. She wasn't talking about one event. She was talking of giving an example of an overarching thing. So now my children understand when I say don't be doing that. I mean, stop it for good. I love you.